In 2008, Allen Stanford was worth $2.2 billion. He owned a private island, 7 airplanes, a cricket stadium the size of a city block. He flew around the Caribbean in a yacht so big, he cut it in half and added 10 more feet, just because he could. 1 year later, he was hiding in his girlfriend's house. The FBI broke down the door, and just like that, the billionaire was gone. But here's the strange part. He was never a billionaire, not even close. He didn't earn that money. He stole it from teachers, doctors, and grandparents, over $5 billion. And for 25 years, the United States government watched him do it. So how did one man from a tiny town in Texas trick the entire world? And why did no one stop him? You're about to find out. But first, you need to meet the boy who started it all. Mexia, Texas. Population, 6,000. It's the kind of town where everyone knows your name. And in the 1950s, everyone knew the Stanford family. Allen's dad was the mayor. His mom threw birthday parties that made the local newspaper. When Allen turned 4, the paper ran a headline. Even as a kid, Allen was bigger than everyone. 6'4", huge hands, a handshake that crushed your fingers. He went to Baylor University, got a business degree, and then he told his friends a secret. He said, "I'm not just going to be rich. I'm going to be the richest person in the world." His first move, fitness clubs. He opened a gym in Waco, Texas, made it men only. Bought the first weight machines anyone had ever seen. Rich people paid $1,000 a year just to sweat next to him. For a while, it worked. He opened 7 locations, drove a nice car, married a wife, had a kid. But then came 1982. The oil market crashed, Texas fell apart, and Allen Stanford's gyms fell with it. He owed $13 million. He couldn't pay his bills. So he did something that would become a pattern. He quit, he walked away, filed for bankruptcy, and disappeared. The last time one of his employees saw him, he was standing behind a counter, flipping hamburgers at a tiny restaurant in town. It looked like the end, but it was really just the beginning, because 3 years later, Allen Stanford found an island. And on that island, he learned how to steal forever. In 1985, Allen Stanford was broke, divorced, flipping burgers. Most people would stay down. But Stanford took a trip, a vacation to a tiny island called Montserrat. At lunch on the beach, he met a European financier, a man who knew how money really worked. And that man told Stanford a secret. He said, "You don't need to be smart to run a bank. You just need to be in the right place." Montserrat had 300 banks. For 12,000 people. Do the math. Most of those banks weren't real. They were shells. Fake doors. Empty rooms. The government didn't ask questions. The police didn't visit. And criminals? They felt right at home. Stanford took notes on a napkin, or maybe a legal pad. The story changes, but the idea was simple. He would open a bank. He would hire no one who knew finance. And he would take money from people who trusted him. Then he would never give it back. He called it Guardian International Bank. His board of directors? His dad, a used car salesman, a retired judge. None of them knew anything about money. His accountant, a college buddy named James Davis, nice guy, totally useless. Davis thought he was building a real bank. He learned the truth later. By then, it was too late. Because Stanford had already discovered the oldest trick in the book. A scam so simple, it's almost beautiful. And once he started, he couldn't stop. The Ponzi scheme is 100 years old. Charles Ponzi didn't invent it, but he made it famous. And the trick is almost too simple. You promise people amazing returns. 10%, 15%. Safe and easy. They give you their money. You don't invest it. You just keep it. When someone wants their money back, you pay them using money from the next person, and the next person, and the next. As long as new people keep showing up, nobody gets hurt. But here's the poison. The moment people stop trusting you, or the moment they all want their money at the same time, the whole thing explodes. Stanford understood this perfectly. He told investors he was buying stocks, safe stocks, boring stocks. He printed fake statements that showed fake growth. He even hired a tiny accounting firm nobody had ever heard of. When someone asked questions, he had an answer. He said, "Trust me. My family has been doing this for 70 years. But his family hadn't done anything. His grandfather ran a small insurance company. That's it. The rest was invented. Stanford literally made up his own history, and people believed him. By 1990, he had millions. By 2000, he had billions. And he hadn't invested a single dollar of his own money. But there was one problem. He couldn't stay in Montserrat forever. The local government started asking questions, so he looked across the water. He saw another island. A smaller island, a weaker island, an island with no extradition laws, no FBI, no rules, Antigua. And on that island, Allen Stanford would become a king. Antigua and Barbuda, 80,000 people, independent since 1981. By the 1990s, the same family had been in charge for years, the Byrd family. They were accused of smuggling drugs and guns and criminals. Extradition, Antigua didn't believe in it. If you ran from American law, you could hide here. One journalist said he met two convicted criminals at lunch on the same day. So when Stanford showed up, the government was thrilled. He built a headquarters that looked like a palace. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, giant eagles everywhere. He had a fetish for eagles, the American eagle, aggressive, predator. One employee said it was like a Hollywood set, beautiful on the outside, empty on the inside. He hired locals who knew nothing about finance. Why? Because they didn't ask questions. He also bought the Bank of Antigua, the government's own bank. It was failing. He saved it. And in return, they gave him something precious. Immunity, no audits, no inspections, no police. Stanford could do whatever he wanted. And he did. He started calling himself Sir Allen Stanford. The government gave him a knighthood. Locals were furious, but no one could stop him. He owned the airport. He owned the airline. He owned the newspaper. He owned the cricket stadium. And if anyone complained, he sued them. 30 in-house lawyers, top outside firms, he didn't lose. But here's the thing about building a kingdom on stolen money. The walls are made of paper, and paper burns. By the late 1990s, Stanford wasn't targeting billionaires. He was targeting people like Jamie Escalona. Jamie lived in Venezuela. He was a technology consultant, not rich, but not poor. He had a wife's, kids' dreams. In Venezuela, the economy was a mess. Banks collapsed. Money disappeared overnight. People were terrified. Then Jamie heard about Stanford. A friend said, "There's this American bank. Offshore. Safe. They give you 2% more than anyone else." Jamie visited a Stanford office. Marble floors, polite staff, free coffee. The salesperson showed him a brochure with guarantees. "Your money is safe," they said. "Diversified investments. Conservative growth. We've been doing this for generations." Jamie believed them. He invested everything. His savings. His retirement. His kids' education fund. $1.2 million. He wasn't alone. Thousands of families did the same. Teachers, doctors, grandparents. They sent money from South America, from Europe, from the United States. They all wanted the same thing, safety, and Stanford gave them paper, fake statements, fake promises, fake hope. Here's the worst part. Stanford only invested about 20% of their money. The rest he spent on yachts, on planes, on mansions, on bribes. When someone wanted their money back, he used cash from new investors. The Ponzi scheme kept spinning. But Jamie didn't know that. Nobody did. Because Stanford had one more weapon, something more powerful than lies. He was a master performer. And his greatest trick was making people trust him. By 2005, Allen Stanford wasn't just a banker. He was a god. He built a $30 million cricket stadium, the best in the Caribbean. Giant screen, VIP boxes, air conditioning. Cricket is everything in the Caribbean. It's not a sport. It's religion. Stanford created a tournament called the Stanford Super Series. The winning team got $20 million. $20 million for one game. ESPN broadcast it. The world watched, and Stanford became a hero. But here's what the cameras didn't show. While the crowd cheered, Stanford was buying their island. He paid $65 million for his own island. He built a dummy house just to see how it would look. Then he knocked it down and built it again. He owned a shopping mall, 6 other houses, a fleet of planes, a yacht that cost $100 million to expand. Local people lived in homes with dirt floors. Stanford had a wine cellar bigger than their apartments, but no one could say anything, because Stanford was the second largest employer on the island. He paid the salaries. He owned the newspaper. He controlled the stories. One journalist wrote, "Is the government running Antigua? Or is Allen Stanford?" The answer was obvious, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. He had everything, money, power, an island, but he wanted more. He wanted to destroy Wall Street. In 2006, Stanford flew 300 financial advisors to New York City. He rented the Intercontinental Hotel. Cost $1.5 million. The theme? Studio 54. The famous disco from the 1970s. There were actors playing Andy Warhol, Elton John, Bianca Jagger. They walked around handing out props, feather bows, fake sunglasses, giant hats. One former employee said it was over the top, but that was typical. But behind the parties, something was wrong. Employees started asking questions, quietly, carefully. One man named Charles Hazlitt worked at Merrill Lynch before Stanford hired him. He was smart, careful, and he noticed something strange. Stanford's bank used a tiny accounting firm. Nobody had heard of them. They had no reputation, no big clients. Hazlitt asked, "Why don't we use a real firm?" The answer came back fast, "Trust us. We've been with them for 20 years. But Hazlitt didn't trust them, so he asked again and again. Finally, his boss pulled him aside. He said, "Are you family? Are you part of the team? Or do you want to resign?" Hazlitt thought about it for 24 hours. He resigned, walked away, lost his bonus. Truss lost his job, but he kept his freedom. Because 2 years later, everyone who stayed would need a lawyer. September 2008. The world fell apart. Lehman Brothers, dead. Bear Stearns, gone. Millions of people lost their retirement overnight. And suddenly, everyone wanted their money back. Stanford had been running his Ponzi scheme for over 20 years. It worked because new investors always showed up. But in 2008, the new investors disappeared. Everyone was scared. Everyone was pulling cash out. Stanford claimed his bank held $8.5 billion. The truth? He had 20 million. That's it. 20 million to pay back billions. The math didn't work. It never would. He went on TV and lied to the whole world. He said, "We are going to grow our business during this crisis. Don't worry." But inside his own office, his employees were panicking. One former insider said everyone knew, or at least everyone suspected, but nobody spoke up. They were making too much money. Sound familiar? In December 2008, Bernie Madoff got caught. The biggest Ponzi scheme in history. You would think Stanford would get scared, maybe run, maybe hide. He did the opposite. He partied harder, spent more, and kept telling everyone he was different. He wasn't, and the clock was about to hit zero. February 17, 2009. Allen Stanford was hiding in his girlfriend's house. Not a mansion, not a palace, just a house, normal, quiet. He thought no one would find him. The FBI arrested him without a fight. No handcuffs on TV, no dramatic takedown, just a quiet knock. It was over. But the real shock came from inside his own bank. 3 days before Stanford got arrested, the FBI grabbed James Davis. And Davis didn't last 1 hour. He confessed everything. He said it was a Ponzi scheme from day one, 1980-something. Over 25 years of lies. Davis admitted that they never owned the investments. The lists were fake, the returns were fake, the bank was fake. Stanford went on TV from jail. He said, "This is a misunderstanding. The money is there. The SEC is trying to ruin me." He even compared losing his company to losing a loved one. One journalist said, "He asked me if I had ever lost someone close to me." He said that's how he felt. No empathy. Not for the teachers, not for the doctors, not for the grandparents who lost everything. He only cared about himself, and the judge noticed. 110 years. He was 62 years old at the time. He will die in prison. But before we feel any pity, let's remember the victims. Jamie Escalona lost $1.2 million. Every penny he saved. Every penny for his kids' education. Every penny for retirement. Gone. So far, victims have received 1 cent for every dollar they lost. 1 cent. If you gave Stanford $1,000, you got back 10. If you gave him 100,000, you got back 1,000. If you gave him everything, you got back nothing. Jamie now runs a victims group. He gets letters every week. People who can't afford medicine. People who lost their houses. People who died waiting for their money. One letter said, "My husband had a heart attack. The stress killed him." Another said, "I can't afford to feed my grandchildren." 21,000 victims. Billions of dollars still missing. And Allen Stanford? He's in a Florida prison. He got beaten up badly by another inmate. Broken nose, cracked ribs. One journalist said, "I can't say I feel sorry for him." He wrote a 300-page letter begging for a new trial. He even published a book, written by a fellow inmate. The title, something about an innocent man being broken by the system. The judge didn't buy it. Neither did the victims. Because here's the truth they want you to remember. Here's the question the documentary never asks. How did one man steal for 25 years? And no one stopped him. The FBI didn't catch Stanford. The SEC didn't catch him. The media didn't catch him. The SEC had evidence in 1997. 2 reports. Red flags everywhere. But the man in charge of investigating Stanford, he left the SEC and tried to go work for Stanford. One journalist said, "You make $100,000 at the SEC. Stanford offers you $250,000. What are you going to do?" The system didn't fail because of one bad guy. The system failed because it was designed to look the other way. Stanford gave $1.6 million to politicians, both parties. He bought access. He bought protection. And when the crisis came, he stood in front of cameras and lied. And people believed him, because the people on TV told them to. This wasn't just one criminal. This was a warning. And the warning says, the next Allen Stanford is out there right now, selling something too good to be true, and waiting for you to trust him. The question isn't why Stanford did it. The question is, who's going to stop the next one? Because so far no one has.